There's a property strategy that's becoming increasingly popular among first home buyers across Australia, making it much easier to own a first property. It's called rentvesting, and it challenges the traditional ideas of home ownership. Rentvesting means buying an investment property in one location whilst continuing to rent where you actually want to live. This means you don't have to compromise on lifestyle or location, especially if you want to live closer to the CBD, where buying a first home may be unrealistic based on current property prices. By buying a cheaper property as a first property and as investment, you enter the property market with a smaller deposit in an area you can afford, rent that out to tenants, and you keep renting and living in your preferred suburb. Now, the reason I'm mentioning rentvesting so early in this course is because before we refilm this for the 2026 grant updates, I had rentvesting much later in the course modules. But by buying an investment as your first property, you then become ineligible for any of the first home grants. So if this is a path you're considering, you won't need to watch all the first home grant videos. They are still available to watch, so you can feel fully informed, but they are now much later in this course. So why would anyone want to miss out on $10,000 to $30,000 of government grants and the stamp duty exemptions on top? Well, I'd like to share a story with you about a client that bought an investment property as their first property. So about 12 months ago, a client bought an investment property as their first property. We recently did a valuation and the property has grown by $180,000. That is just over 12 months. How amazing is that? Now, if they continue to save to buy a home to live in, putting away $300 a week, after 12 months, they would have only had an extra $15,600. Instead, they opted to forgo any first home grants, bought an investment, and now they're $180,000 ahead. Now, if they ever sell this house to buy, their deposit has now nearly grown by $180,000. After selling and government fees, call it $160,000. But could you save $160,000 in 1 year? Most can't. So it may be something to consider rather than continuing to save to buy a home to live in. Now, any scenarios discussed here are general in nature and do not guarantee outcomes, as results depend on individual circumstances, lending criteria, and market conditions. So why are first home buyers now choosing this path? Well, the most common reason is affordability. Most properties in and around major cities are too expensive to buy as a first home. So instead of stretching your finances to buy in an expensive area, rentvesting allows you to purchase in a more affordable location, such as regional and outer suburbs, different states, where property prices are lower and your deposit goes much further. And as someone else living in the home, they're paying the rent, so it's much less of a financial commitment. Now, how the monthly repayments look is simple. There is still a mortgage, but the tenant pays rent, which covers most of this monthly commitment. There's usually a small difference in between. Now, the difference between the rent and the mortgage, traditionally, rent goes up over time. So after several years, the rental income may equal or be greater than the mortgage repayments. So when does rentvesting make sense? Rentvesting can work well if you have strong income but limited savings. And if you're comfortable with landlord-tenant dynamics for the medium term, and if you're focused on building long-term wealth rather than immediate home ownership. So if you do choose rentvesting, treat it as a serious investment decision. Research growth areas carefully, speak to a data analyst or buyer's agent, understand cash flow properly, speak with an accountant, factor in property management costs, insurance and maintenance, and make sure the shortfall between the rent received and the loan repayments plus the expenses is sustainable for you over several years, not just manageable for a few short months. Now, rentvesting is a legitimate strategy that works for thousands of Australians, but it's not a shortcut and it's not suitable for everyone. If you are considering this as an alternative to buying a home to live in, speak with a mortgage broker or a financial advisor who can model the numbers based on your actual income, especially on your deposit and your goals. Now, if you would like to speak with a mortgage broker about this further to explore the options, there will be a link below this video where you can speak with me and my team.